Sweet and sour pork is the quintessential Chinese-American dish. It's so popular that I've never seen a Chinese restaurant that didn't include it on the menu. Yet curiously, almost no one attempts to make this at home, and it really isn't that difficult, especially compared to many classic European dishes. Plus, it's pretty fast to make once you have the sauce ready. Now, this is not the candy-sweet strip mall version. This is how it's made in finer Chinese restaurants, only modified here for a home stove.
Now, the actual amount of pork that you use is variable. This entire recipe is arbitrary for the quantities. It's just what makes you happy. I've cut pork up that is a little bit of fat running through it. Nice bite-sized pieces, no gristle, no bones, of course. I'm going to put about a tablespoon of Shaoxing Chinese wine or sherry. You can use about a tablespoon of soy sauce and about a teaspoon or so of sesame oil. And we'll stir this around and let it marinate like this first for like an hour or so. Put it back in the refrigerator, keep it cold, and then we'll add the other ingredients. But let it sit like this for about an hour in the fridge. When the marination time is up, take this out of the fridge, of course. I have a whole egg here, which I'm going to lightly whisk. Now, this is actually too much egg for this, so I'm going to use about half of it. And now I've got, it was 220 grams of pork, is 22 grams, 1/10 the amount of cornstarch. You need about one egg per 450 grams of meat, but 450 grams of meat to make a very, very large serving. So, not doing that much. Of course, if you scale it up, then. So, this is what you want to see. This is what it should look like. And now we're going to leave it sit like this at room temperature for a little while. The oil is going to preheat, but even before we begin preheating the oil, just leave it sit like this at room temperature for like 15 minutes at least. And when the oil comes up to temperature, you're going to cook a few pieces of pork at a time here. Don't try to do all of them or you'll overcrowd the pan. Temperature will drop. It'll just be an oily, gooey mess. So pick out a few pieces. At temperature, each one's going to take about 2.5 minutes to cook. But be patient. Do them in batches. This size pan, about 5 at a time is enough. I can get it in 3 sections. I'm going to start the time. Now, with Chinese stir-fry food, your mise en place is absolutely essential. You have to have everything sitting by, ready to go. I have about 90 grams of red bell pepper, about 45 grams of green bell pepper, about 90 grams of onion coarsely chopped, 90 grams of pineapple. The quantities of these is really up to you. You know, if you really like red bell pepper and you hate onion, you know, you can mix it around. This is typical for restaurant quantities. I've got 15 grams of ginger and garlic here that I chopped myself. Please don't use that bottled crap that's the ginger and garlic mix. It does not have the right flavor. It's just I can't say enough bad things about it. Chop it yourself. Don't be lazy. And the sweet and sour sauce that was made from before, and of course the pork that we just deep fried. Now this has a nice coating on it, which is going to serve to soak up that sauce. Okay, and of course some peanut oil standing by, a little soy sauce. Now once the pan becomes hot, now you can add the peanut oil. I'm going to add, you know, about 20 or 30 milliliters of peanut oil to this. And give it a minute for the oil to get hot too. The burner setting is on just under 8, so it's fairly high. You want this to cook at a high temperature. This is not a wok, but still the principle is the same. In fact, in this particular case, you don't need a wok. Everything's, if you were using a wok, everything's going to stay in the bottom anyway. Okay. I'm sure that the oil is up to temperature now. So I'm going to begin frying the ginger and the garlic. Just for like a minute. Okay, it's been about a minute. Now I add all of the vegetables and the pineapple. You can stir it around a little bit, but you don't have to go crazy because you want to get some color on those vegetables. Just a little bit. And what you have to watch for is that garlic and ginger doesn't start to burn, because the pan is quite hot, and if the garlic burns, the whole thing's going to be bitter. Give it like one more minute. And you can't just dump the sweet and sour sauce in, because you need some of that caramelization, that slight blackening on these vegetables in order to give the authentic flavor. If you were using authentic Chinese wok burner, this would happen much faster because that thing's really, really hot. But on a traditional stove, it's going to take a few minutes. And then you've got problems here because your garlic is going to be on the verge of burning by the time the vegetables get some browning on them. So this is why it's very tricky to cook this sort of food in a home stove. This recipe works especially well because, of course, the pork is cooked ahead of time by deep frying it. Okay, I'm gonna call this done. It's been in there for a good 3 or 4 minutes, and garlic and ginger is starting to turn brown. Now I'm gonna add sweet and sour sauce to this. Get it up to a simmer here. And I'm going to add all the pork to it. I want the coating on the pork to not only thicken the sweet and sour sauce, but also to be softened by it. So, to get this going, put a lid on it. Now I'm lowering the heat down to medium during this period of time. And after about 5 minutes, you can take the lid off, give it a stir. Going to continue to reduce it a little bit, but most of the cooking is done now. You can also add, I know some people are going to freak out at this, but some MSG, about 3/4 of a teaspoon, I would say, and a little dash of soy sauce, just a teaspoon or so. And now we're going to continue cooking this. Heat's still on medium, just to reduce it just a little bit more, just to thicken it up a little bit, give those last flavors we added a chance to integrate.
Put it out on a platter and sprinkle some chopped green scallions over the top. The second volume of my cookbook is now available through Amazon and other booksellers. It covers the YouTube recipes from the last 8 months with more in-depth information. I received requests for the procedures on all recipes, and I've listened to you. Every recipe has step-by-step directions, and of course there are recipes that aren't on YouTube. But this is not just a recipe book. Far from it, as you can see from some of the topics scrolling by here. I'm certain that anyone who watches my channel and any serious cook will find this book a treasury of useful and new information you won't find anywhere else. If you want to know more about my adventures as a chef around the world and have some great laughs along the way, be sure to check out the video tour of my book, 40 Years in One Night. It's up on YouTube right now. Click the link. Also look for my cocktail book, Cocktails of the South Pacific and Beyond, Advanced Mixology, available through Amazon online.